My name is Dr. David Sherry. I am a professor as well as a director of mental health and performance at Winthrop University, just outside of Charlotte, North Carolina. And in this presentation, I'm going to be going over how you as a parent can help support your child in whatever area they are within the rowing world, whether they're just starting or whether they're a collegiate rower well on their way within their career. Hopefully you'll be able to gain some things from this. I also was a rower when I was in college. After college, I coached for a number of years. I coached high school, I coached college, and I coached adults. So I come at this from many different ways. I'm also a licensed mental health counselor, so I look at both the mental performance as well as the mental health side of things. Today, it's going to be much more about mental performance, but hopefully you'll be able to take something from this and be able to apply it with whatever you are doing with your child. We will have time at the end for some Q&A, so please, if you do have any questions, let me know. And also at the end, I will have a QR code you can scan for all of the information that we're talking about. I put it together in a little online booklet. So it'll have all this information we go over, plus some additional bonus stuff that we just won't have time to get into today. So with all that, let's go ahead and get started. I want to start with a question. Why mental performance? To answer this question, I want you to first think of the physical demands of rowing. You probably don't have to be around this sport long enough to know that it is very physically demanding. However, when we also take, I guess, a step back, we start seeing how mentally demanding the sport is as well. Not only does it take this unique combination of strength and endurance, but it takes a unique combination of mental skills in order to be successful. However, unlike physical fitness, let's say, or strength, that you need to be successful, the mental skills are usually unknown. And so your kid may be trying to work their way through performance anxiety or lack of motivation or whatever it is that comes up. And you may not be knowing what to do because it's not as obvious as it is if they're just, quote unquote, not in shape and they just have to get stronger or run faster or whatever it might be. So today, hopefully you'll learn not only what some of these skills are, but then your role in being able to reinforce or support them with these skills. Just really briefly, before we get into some things you can do as a parent, just so you can kind of know what the main skills are that I emphasize when I work individually with rowers or with teams, there's three big ones. The first one is focus. This is because rowing demands sustained attention over a lot of different things. This can include technique, rhythm, like matching with other people in the boat, pacing to make sure you don't go out too hard or not hard enough, as well as just listening to the coach or your teammates or your coxswains, whatever it might be. There's a lot going on and you got to be able to focus on the right things at the right time. Very important. The second one is resilience, because rowers face a lot of physical pain and challenges in this sport, as well as just setbacks, because this is what I like to call a practice sport, meaning we practice a lot more than we actually race. And so sometimes it takes a lot to be able to get through, let's say, winter training, as an example. And so resilience helps you bounce back, helps you recover, and then re-engage with what's important. And then finally, emotional regulation. This is really the foundation of confidence and motivation, because an athlete needs to be able to take everything that's going inside of them, whether it's thoughts, feelings, emotions, and process them and be able to funnel them into productive work. These three together is what I just like to call the mental performance triangle, because focus helps keep rowers present, while resilience helps keep them engaged, and then that emotional regulation helps keep them steady and motivated through a long practice season, through all the spring racing. So within all this, why do parents matter? How do they matter? I personally think that parents are the most influential part or component of a training program that gets overlooked. It's usually not put into a coach's training process, and I think it's really a shame, because parents have a lot of influence. You might be thinking, why is this? How does this actually fit into the rowing world? It's because parents, you influence the emotional climate that your rower experiences. So they're obviously at home, but even when they're not at home, they're influenced by things that they observe, things that they see. And this becomes even more important when you are present, whether that's races or practices, wherever it might be. Your tone, your body language, words that you say, your expectations, whether they're real or just perceived by your rower, can either calm down or escalate the stress response system that your rower has. And we'll get into just a moment why that's so important. Now, while you can impact your rower, especially if you're there at a regatta, you can also impact them if you aren't there, if you aren't physically present. And this can be both a good influence or it can be a bad influence. And we'll get into how that can work out. So knowing all this, what can you actually do? This brings us to our most important point of this whole presentation. Everything will come back to this phrase that small shifts make a big difference. Small shifts in what you do, small shifts in how you talk to your rower, how you help them will make all of the difference in setting that emotional climate. This is similar to, building muscle over time. Takes days, weeks, months of lifting weights to get stronger, to see the performance in gains. The same thing happens on the mental side. There's no magic formula. There's no, super secret thing that I have to share with you. I wish it was that easy. Rather, it's just going to be relatively simple tools, as you'll see in just a moment, that if they're just applied and used and reinforced consistently over time by both you and your rower, that's what leads to results. The thing is, it has to be done over time. These small shifts can make a big difference, but only if done consistently. All right, so what are these actual tools you might be thinking of? There's going to be 3 that we go over here tonight: calm communication, the nervous system reset, calm reflection. These 3 things will tie into those 3 mental skills that I talked about in the beginning. And if you can do these things, these small shifts over time, you are going to see differences in your rower, how they actually, let's say, approach an erg test, how they approach a race, if they're low in motivation. All of these things, maybe not be solved 100% with these, but you will see noticeable differences if these small shifts are done over time by both you and your rower. Now, I am just going to give a broad overview of all 3 of these, but it should be enough, or I hope it's going to be enough for you really to understand the concepts, and then you'll be able to kind of tailor it to your own needs, to your own kid, what he or she actually needs. And again, there will be a parent guide at the end that you can scan to get that will go over all of these concepts and more, actually. So let's go ahead and jump into it. The first one is calm communication. Why is this the foundational tool? Why this tool first? Well, it starts because of the stress response system. I talked about that just a few slides ago. So when your rower gets stressed, this could be because of a race, it could be because of an erg test, or just they're stressed in general for whatever reason. The brain has a harder time processing regular advice because your brain has been hijacked. Stress has been hijacked. And this is true for all of us, but especially true for pre-adolescents and adolescents and even into young adults, because part of your brain is not fully developed. So what actually happens here? When you get stressed, let's say because of an erg test that you have to do, your thinking brain, or the prefrontal cortex, that part that's right up here, that's responsible for rational thought, for verbal reasoning, for decision making, all of these things that we want in ourselves and our rowers, kind of goes offline. It's there, but it's not very responsive. And that's because the emotional brain, the limbic system, this center of your brain, it's right in the middle, that takes over. And that is very emotional. It's very impulsive. It's very reactive. And you're much less receptive when this part of your brain is in control, to regular advice. So lectures and your normal pep talks, they're not really going to work when this emotional type, impulsive type brain is online and the prefrontal cortex, the thinking brain, is not online. Instead, what your rower needs are these short phrases that can normalize, support, and help them refocus on what is important so they feel supported and engaged. So how do we actually do this? Well, it starts with how we actually talk to our rower, hence the calm communication. I'm going to go over just two very common phrases that I hear parents and coaches say all of the time, and just some recommendations on how we may be able to better say it for this state. Now, I will want to say that I recognize these things are usually said to be supportive. Don't be nervous, or you should win, or you should be successful. But they often either don't work or they backfire because it's not perceived by the rower as, let's say, calm or supportive in the ways that they need with that kind of emotional brain that's really running the show. So I'll go through some substitute languages that kind of avoid some of the pressure and fix it type things. But again, these are just examples, and I recognize that you may or may not actually say these things directly, but they should at least highlight some common patterns that you can then take as tools and apply to whatever conversation you actually have with your child. All right, so what is this first one? Don't be nervous. Why do these types of things backfire? It's because it invalidates, again, this is your rower's perception when that emotional brain is in control. It invalidates their experience of feeling anxious and feeling nervous, and it implies that something might be wrong with them. Maybe like, why shouldn't I feel like this? What's wrong with me? Why am I different? This can increase feelings, of shame, confusion, and that's just not where they want to be or should be before a race, before a 2K, whatever they have to do. So what can you say instead? You want to say something like, it's normal to feel nervous. It means your body's just getting ready to perform. Something along those lines. Why does this work? Because it validates and normalizes the emotion. It's normal to feel anxious. I don't think I've met a rower, or a coach for that matter, that doesn't feel anxious before these big events. And so that is normal to feel. And it helps them feel maybe less, quote unquote, broken, that there's something wrong with them. And it can help them actually feel more prepared because, oh, everybody feels this way. Now I can actually focus on what I need to do, which will be the next skill, instead of just worrying about, something's wrong and I shouldn't feel this way and fighting against that. The second big phrase that I hear said a lot is, you must win, you should do really well, you're going to do great. These kinds of things said in the most supportive way. And I completely understand that. When I was a young coach, I would use these phrases all the time. But unfortunately, can add pressure to your child, especially if your child is very, type A or a perfectionist. It can add pressure because it can trigger the fear of failure. What happens if I don't win? Because I should win. What happens if I don't, set my PR when I really should? And this can undermine intrinsic motivation and emotional safety. And I say emotional safety not as kind of like a, buzzword, but more of your child feeling vulnerable with you. So being able to come to you and share things that might be embarrassing to them. If they feel invalidated or they feel like there's this pressure, this fear of failure, that might kind of close them off because they're scared of letting you down. Whether they can really phrase it that way or not, or understand that could be what's going on in the background. So what can you say that's different? Focus on what you can control. Now you can substitute in more specific language, and I encourage that you do, focus on whatever their pacing strategy is. Focus on your leg drive, focus on your coxswain's calls, whatever it might be. Something that's very tangible for them, because this shifts the focus from the outcome. They have to win a race, they have to set a certain time, to a process, which builds confidence because they have control or more control over the process. This also encourages, as a bonus, agency. So they kind of have buy-in here, and it reduces just feelings of, being overwhelmed, because now they feel like, oh, I can actually do something. I can control something. I'm not at the whim of what other boats do, or if it's a good day or a bad day. So these are, again, just two phrases. Hopefully you can kind of see some strategies in there that you can then apply with your rower. I want to move on to the next strategy here, the next skill, this nervous system reset. And this builds on the calm communication. And we'll see how it does it with kind of a common scenario here. Let's say your rower has to do an erg test, 2K, I guess more like a 5 or 6K because we're in the fall right now. For most rowers, this causes kind of a chain of events to happen. The first thing is it's going to cause some stress, that stress response that we just talked about. That's going to trigger the fight or flight or freeze mentality. That emotional brain kicks in, the adrenaline starts going, their rational thinking brain kind of goes offline, it's less receptive. This then lowers your rower's ability to focus and has negative effects on his or her coordination, meaning they just can't do whatever it is they should do as well as they can do. So whether it's their technique, their power, whatever it is diminished because their brain is distracted and not firing as well as it can. So to counter this, what we need is to be able to have some tools that shift the brain from this panic state to a performance state. Hopefully the table's already been set, so to speak, with the calm communication. So you're validating what's going on, normalizing it, maybe helping them already start to focus on what they can control. That's great. So how can we build on that? It's a two-step process. I try to keep it very simple. The first one is this breathing reset. There's lots of different breaths out there. I usually have my rowers that I work with do 4-6 breathing. This is inhaling for 4, exhaling for 6 with a small pause in the middle. Box breathing works as well, which is equal inhale, hold, exhale, hold, inhale, and so on, hence the box there. What I like about the 4-6 is the longer exhales actually activate the body's calming system, the parasympathetic nervous system. That slows the heart rate, it reduces the muscle tension, which helps with the coordination, but it also signals to the brain that they're not in quite a threatening environment. And what I really like about breathing is it's quick and discreet and easy to do. So if your rower is kind of panicking or they're just really anxious, doing that quick breathing reset can just kind of help them get centered, and they don't really have to draw a lot of attention to themselves. They can do it in the car, they can do it on the dock, they can do it while they're sitting on the erg, like the picture here. It's very easy, and it acts like a primer. Like if you're painting a room, you might put a primer on the wall first. That kind of helps set the color. This is the same thing. Breathing helps set the tone, so then you can build on it with the second set. So what can you do as a parent? The first thing is mention but don't require. I think almost everybody here in the room is a parent of either a pre-adolescent or a teen or a young adult. So you probably don't have to have me tell you that if you tell them to do something, that rebellious instinct might kick in and they might push away. You don't want to tell them to do any of these strategies. You just want to mention it. Hey, I heard it from this guy on this webinar. It might be helpful for you. Or maybe they've already heard of it, they've already read about it, they've heard about it from a counselor before, just reminding them, because breathing is so easy just to disregard. Oh, this is too easy, it'll never work. It does. If you take slow, deep breaths, your body, your physiology has to calm down. So mention it, but don't require it. The second, much more important point is to model it yourself. You don't have to be a rower yourself here to be on the dock and being nervous to model breathing. Just when you get upset or agitated or frustrated, if they see you taking that step back for a moment, taking a deep breath before you actually engage, that's going to mean a lot more than you just talking about it with them. Modeling it would be awesome. And then finally, what I think is great, if you can get to this level, if you have a good relationship with your kid and they're not going to be embarrassed to do it with you, this is awesome. Just taking deep breaths together. If you're driving to practice, or you're talking to them before a race and you see that they're nervous, just doing a few deep breaths together, being able to do it in company helps calm the nervous system even more because our brains mirror that of the person we're with. So if you're calm and deep breathing, that's going to calm them down. They're going to regulate to you. And it's a good way just to bond with your athlete, with your son and daughter as well. These are 3 things on how you can bring this breathing to them. Obviously, you can't do the breathing for them, but you can support them in this way in this kind of step 1. So if this is the primer, what is step 2? Step 2 is the thought reset. And the thought reset is a 2-part sentence or phrase. And part 1, and this is all in that parent guide as well, so don't worry if this is a lot of information being thrown at you. Part 1 of this 2-part sentence is acknowledging what's happening. I feel nervous. I feel worried. I'm scared. Whatever it is, I'm angry and frustrated. Just acknowledging what it is. Because if we acknowledge it instead of try to fight against it, it actually has almost an ironic result of loosening the pressure. If we try to fight it or suppress it or convince ourselves we shouldn't feel that way, it will actually backfire and become a bigger deal in our minds. So accepting it is step 1 in this short phrase. And then the second part is refocusing on something they can control. Refocus on what they can do. So an example of this would be, okay, I'm nervous before my 2K or 5K or 6K erg test. I'm sitting down there like the person on the picture, sitting on the erg, and I'll say to myself, okay, my mind's really racing. I'm really anxious. Part 1, I'm acknowledging and accepting that's what it is. Then step 2 would be, but I'm still going to focus on pushing hard with my legs. That's something I can control. That's something I can focus my attention on and away from just feeling worried about being anxious. Very simple. It takes practice, but it's something that is very powerful if your rower can get in the habit of doing this. They can pair it with imagery too. So seeing themselves in their mind being successful, pushing through, or whatever their keyword is, that can be nice to kind of pair with that sentence. So what can you do? As I've said before and multiple times, normalize the idea that being anxious, being worried, whatever emotion they typically feel is normal. I can guarantee you there's a lot of other rowers on their team that feel the same way. They just aren't talking about it. The second thing is help them brainstorm this phrase. You can tell them about it, tell them why it would work. And then together you can come up with what's the best thing you can say. What is the actual emotion that they're feeling? Help them with that. Sometimes it's hard to put words to our feelings. There's actually, you can Google this, but there are emotion or feeling wheels. It's kind of like a color wheel, but for emotions, and have them go through that and point out the exact emotion that they're feeling. There's real power in labeling and identifying. And then from there, help them think of, okay, what could you actually think of? What could you refocus your attention on? What's something you can control that you feel confident in? And then just like the other one, don't say the phrase for them. Don't come up with the phrase for them. You can help brainstorm, but it has to be them. They have to be the ones. It has to be their words because that is what gives them buy-in. All right, we're going to go into the last one, and I know we're getting close to the 7:30. I'm probably going to run a little bit over. We started a few minutes late. So if you do have to go right at 7:30, I completely understand this is being recorded, so you'll have access to that. But if you want to stick around, I will keep going and have questions and all that at the end. All right, our final tool is the confidence reflection. I use this, I think, with almost every single rower and team that I work with because it does several things very well. So I guess save the best for last. So first, it helps rowers process what happened, whether good or bad. And through this processing, it enables them to learn from the experience instead of just reacting to the experience. And as a result, they build confidence, which also can improve motivation as a side benefit. Now, I want to stress here that this works with positive and negative things. So they can still build confidence even if they just lost a race that they thought that they should have won, or if they blow up on a 2K and did terrible on it, they can still build confidence from that, which when I first learned this kind of turned it on my head, because usually when we fail at something, it chips away at our confidence. This is a way of kind of reclaiming that. So it's a thoughtful, reflective process. So what is it? It's a 3-step process, 3 questions to ask. Rowers can do this on their own, but there's a lot of power in doing this with somebody else and you are in the perfect position to do this with them. So the first one is asking the question, what went well? So invite your rower to think of something that went good. What worked? What felt right? Even if it was a terrible day, they really need to find the positive. There was something positive. And I joke that even if it's going down to my shoelaces didn't come untied during the warm-up or whatever it is, as however minor or big it needs to be, find something positive. One thing you can do to kind of prompt this, if you're doing this with them, is you can say, what's one thing that felt good about today? What's one thing you're proud of about today? Again, do not move on until this question is answered. If you're teaching this to your rower and they're going to do it on their own, really encourage them not to move on until they answer this question. You really want to keep it open-ended and make sure that there's no real evaluation here. We're not judging it. This isn't good or bad. You're not putting the words in their mouths. You want them to answer it, and you want to react in a very neutral way. You don't want to really praise them for the good things and then be harsh and critical for the bad things. Just very neutral. You're a sounding board for them. The second question in this reflection process is, what didn't go well? This isn't about harsh criticism or anything. It's about finding the challenges, the mistakes, the moments that just didn't feel very, very good. We want to be careful in this, not to go in a spiral here and just start complaining about everything. This is being very targeted, very specific. What didn't go well in your race? Why do you think you didn't get the time that you wanted? Really have them think objectively about maybe, just the timing wasn't good. Maybe the weather was bad. Maybe they just didn't feel like they got a lot of sleep, or they were feeling sick, or they just, had a lot of anxiety, and that's what it was. Just have them be specific as they can. You can prompt this by saying, what felt most challenging, what didn't go right. I'm sure you can kind of think of it based off of what kinds of things your rower would respond to. Again, not harsh criticism. We're not there to yell at them, to blame them for anything. It's an honest reflection. And we want to make sure that they don't get caught up in complaining either. So if they start doing that, make sure that you bring it back, if you're doing it with them, to something that is more constructive. This is constructive criticism. It's honest. We're not trying to deny something didn't go right, but it's constructive. And even if they had the best day on the water, the best race of their life, really try to help them think of what could be something that they could do even better, what's something that they could improve, not to take away from what just happened and try to find something that was wrong, but usually there's always one good thing that they could do. And then finally, the last one here is, what's one thing to try? And in this is the action step. So this is a specific thing that they can do tomorrow at practice or at the next race, something that can be done right away. You can prompt it by saying, what's one thing you want to try to focus on next time? It should be very tangible and not too big. If it's multi-step, that's okay, but just focus on the one step. So maybe it's, okay, tomorrow I'm going to make sure that, maybe I get a bit more sleep before practice the next day so I feel better. Or maybe it's, I ate the wrong thing beforehand, so I'm going to make sure I eat this before practice. Or I didn't stretch out, or I didn't listen to what the coach was saying on this cue, and that's really what I'm going to do. Something very, very practical and tangible. Keep it small and doable. There we go. So to kind of sum this all up, I know we're right at time here. Just a few key reminders that go across everything, and then I'll open it up to questions and answers. So validate, don't dismiss. You've probably heard me say this a million times already, but we want to normalize what's going on. We want to validate with what they're feeling is real. We're not trying to brush it off, not trying to tell them they shouldn't feel this way. They do feel this way. So instead of saying, don't be nervous, you shouldn't feel nervous, say it's normal to feel nervous. And if it's feeling a little bit overwhelming, let's talk about why that might be. Second is model the reset. I talked about this a little bit in one of the strategies, but practice these techniques with them. These techniques will work just as well for you in your stressful situations as it will for your rower. So if they see you doing these things, especially like the breathing, some of these other things, that's going to help them want to do it and see that it could actually be helpful. And then finally, focus on the process, not perfection. This is a mantra I tell to almost every team and athlete that I work with, that we are looking at what went well. How can we build skills over time? We're not looking for you to be perfect every time. The sport is not designed that way. It's too hard to be perfect and have a great race and a great test and a great practice every single day. We're going to have ups and downs, and that is normal. So that's all I have to share with you. I know it's a lot of information at once, so that's why I have the parent guide here. If you just scan that with your phone, it'll take you there. It's all the information and more. Please, please, please give feedback. It only takes about 2 minutes. It's just a few questions. It helps me understand what was really helpful for you, what you might want to see in the future, what wasn't so helpful for you. And then there's a way to stay in contact if that's of interest to you. If you do have any questions, there should be a Q&A button that you can press, and you can type in your question. I'll stick around for as long as needed. But if you don't have any questions, thank you so much for taking time out of your evening tonight, and I hope that you found this useful for you and your rower.